type. Hi, everybody. I'm trying to post the passcode to get in here so you can all participate, and it won't let me type anything. Okay, it's in the comments. So I'm not that that's going to help you any. Okay. Hi, Shannon. Are you there?
Hello?
Oh, there you are. Hi, it's already recording, so we're going to just jump right into our meeting today. So I did post the passcode, so hopefully people will find that. I couldn't get it to let me edit the post. So, okay, well, we're going to start right out. Welcome today to our Daring Greatly Part 2 discussion. This is recording already, so we're going to just get right into it. I'm going to cover Chapter 2, and then Shannon is going to cover Chapter 3. So Chapter 2 is called Debunking the Vulnerability Myths. And she starts out, there's a quote that says, vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. And that's something that I have to think about. Sounds like truth and feels like courage. I definitely get the feels like courage part. What do you think, Shannon? How does it sound like truth?
Well, I definitely agreed with that. It's kind of hard to put it into words, so I had a hard time making notes about that. But I guess it's like when someone points out something to you that makes you uncomfortable because you know they're right, even though you wouldn't have said the same thing to yourself or out loud to anyone else, but they suddenly hit a soft spot and you go, yeah, that's true. And you can't disagree.
Maybe when somebody's correcting you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, I like that. Thank you. Okay, I made just like 4 slides today to help because I'm a very visual learner and I figure a lot of people are. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Let's see if I can. Are you seeing?
Yep.
PowerPoint? Okay, so vulnerability is the core of all emotions and feelings. To feel is to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is also the cradle of the emotions and experiences that we crave. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. It's the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. Wow, I thought that was a really profound paragraph. And you know that vulnerability is the thing that we have to get comfortable with so that we can have all these other things that we want. And creativity, I totally get that. To be creative is to risk, to color outside the lines and make yourself vulnerable to what other people might think, or if anybody else will even understand your concept. But how does joy, what's the relationship with vulnerability and love and belonging, joy, courage? What do you think?
I guess I kind of feel like sometimes because you're happy about something, something has brought you joy, sometimes we feel uncomfortable showing that on the outside because somebody might think, oh, they're too happy, or they didn't get the same reaction. Something happened that didn't make them happy, but it made me happy. And so I think sometimes it's that we are comfortable feeling joy on the inside, but it's that showing other people we're happy with more than just like a smile or a pleased expression. That telling somebody that made me so happy sometimes is kind of showing you a soft spot, that this thing, not just like, oh, that was a good joke, it made me laugh, because that's I think a different kind of joy, humor, but it sometimes feels kind of like you're showing a weakness, that this thing made me happy because maybe it didn't make someone else feel happy.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. Definitely different than what I was thinking. Is for me, it was that joy is something that's sort of an after emotion that
Mm-hmm.
comes after taking risk. That you did something scary, or that you jumped into a relationship, you tried a new venture, you told somebody how you feel, and then after that, and when you share that vulnerability with another person, that's when joy comes. It's kind
Right.
of like an aftertaste, but it's an after feel. But love, obviously, you're giving of yourself. You're giving something that may be rejected. Even if you're just trying to help somebody in need and giving love that way, they may reject your help.
Right.
They may be really unkind, in fact. But to have love and have it returned, it requires us to take that risk of being vulnerable and belonging. Oh, I think we all know about that one, don't we?
Yeah, for sure.
To risk trying to fit in with other people is, and I think we all have a lot of painful memories of that, no matter where our status was in our childhood and youth.
Mm-hmm.
That when I was in the 6th grade, I just got glasses the year before. We moved to a new town, so I was the new kid on the first day of school, and this was in the 70s. And I had these hexagon shaped gold wire frame glasses, and my hair was short blonde, and my mom had taken me to a friend to have get a haircut before we moved, and they got to talking and she cut off way too much, so it was really short for the time, shorter than it is now. And that was the same time that the Waltons was popular on TV, and everybody watched it. It was a great show. And the lead character is the oldest son, named John Boy. And when he sits down to read or write, well, most of the time, I think he wore these round wire framed glasses, and he had short blonde hair. So this girl in my 6th grade class said that, commented in front of everybody, like while we're waiting outside the door to come into the classroom, that I looked just like John Boy. And I don't think it was the first day of school, but it was in those first couple of days. And I didn't even know anybody. And so my first real exposure to my classmates was to be made fun of. And everybody laughed, and it was really awful. The rest of that year, they called me John Girl. That was my nickname.
Rude.
And that, I know her name, but I'm not going to say it. I still see her on Facebook, posts of my friends that she's friends with. I never did become friends with her, because she was so unkind to me. And I think it was all because she felt vulnerable. She's trying to make me look more vulnerable than she felt.
Right.
And, she had unkind things to say about a lot of people. And so I just never had any use for her, and I went on without her. I kind of wish that somewhere in there I had been strong enough to reach out to her and try to heal that, but I just never felt like I needed her in my life. So that was, a lot of where belonging became difficult for me.
Right.
And, so, but I think, go ahead.
I had a similar experience. Not that anyone called me a name or made fun of me, but in kindergarten, it was probably one of the first days of school. So I hadn't really met anybody that I didn't already know from before kindergarten started, preschool or whatever, or the neighbors. And a girl that I ended up going to school with till we moved away from our hometown. I went up to her because she seemed like a nice girl, and she looked like she was having fun with other girls who seemed like fun. And I said, "Hey, could I play with you?" She turned around and said, "No, you can't play with us." And then they all walked away. And that entire group of girls stayed friends throughout our school, and I was never friends with any of them because they were rude. You know, it was just a simple, can I play with you? And it's not like they were playing a game that had a limited number of people or anything like that. It was just out at recess, and that simple, nope, you can't play with us. I mean, if anyone has seen Mean Girls, it's like when Georgina says, you can't sit with
I
us.
haven't, but I get the whole idea just
And
from the title.
yeah, and you know, one phrase, and even if they aren't trying to be rude, just that rejection of, nope, you can't play with us, you can't sit here, it's damaging for the rest of your life. And I had a hard time after that reaching out to other kids that I wasn't already friends with, or that I didn't immediately have something in common with, and basically saying, can I be your friend? And I did a little in high school with some of the more popular crowd, but it ended up because we had something in common, or they realized that just because I'm not one of the popular kids, I'm still nice, or I'm still fun, or whatever, and they would end up reaching out to me first. And then I jump on it because, sure, I'd love to be your friend.
Yeah, that happens too.
But it was hard for me to step outside and say, hey, I want to be that person's friend, and go ask. Because, you know, as a 5-year-old, that's terrifying to have anybody tell you, no, you can't play with me.
And you know, as a 5-year-old, or for me, a 11-year-old, it's you know, it's so painful, and we don't really know how to respond or even how to work through it in our mind or cope with it. But I think it kind of sets a position for us. I mean, we all either experience something like that where somebody is so unkind to us in our early years, or you witness it happening to somebody else. And so either way, you know, that is dangerous territory, and I'm staying out of that minefield. And so, you know, now we have that that guard up, that wall, that we don't want to be emotionally exposed. And
Right.
I think people deal with it different ways, but for me, it kind of set you know, a boundary that I was very tentative to cross for many years. And, you know, even though I moved a lot, had to learn to make friends a lot, you know, I got pretty good at that. Making real connections was a whole nother story, and it still is.
Right.
Brene Brown defines vulnerability as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. So I have this slide, which you already had a flash of, that everything you want is on the other side of fear. But I crossed out fear and put vulnerability. And you know what? I had this, if I had this on a slideshow, it was animated to fly in. Anyway, this is attributed to Jack Canfield, but I saw some others that gave it to somebody, George somebody. But I think Jack Canfield is responsible for this. He's the guy that did the Chicken Soup for the Soul books.
Okay.
And I've heard this quote so many times, that everything you want is on the other side of fear, but I've usually thought of it as on the other side of your comfort zone. And I think that's what vulnerability means, that we're willing to cross into our comfort zone, cross through it to the other side, and get what we want. And so that comfort zone, vulnerability,
Kind of like the
fear,
tool to get to the other side.
yeah. And that could be friends, love, business, acceptance, change, you know, like social change, all of those things that we want the world to be different, our world or the world around us to be different. It requires vulnerability for us to get anywhere with it.
Right.
So I hope that if somebody comes into the room, that I'll still see the thingy about, let's see. Yeah, it's not, I think it would still give me a notice if somebody was trying to get in. I just don't want anybody to be, you know, left trying to get into the room.
Right.
Okay, so let's move on, because I want to leave you plenty of time for your side. So everything we want is on the other side of vulnerability. So what is vulnerability to you? There was a long list in the book. Let me see if I didn't have it bookmarked, but some of the ones that I marked that, oh yeah, I totally can relate with that, was starting my own business.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, for me, the business I'm trying to do, I don't have to stop. I don't have to quit another job. I don't have to put my income at risk. It's just putting me at risk. Reaching out to people and sharing what I have and risking whether I'm accepted or that anybody even will receive what I say. So presenting my product to the world and getting no response. That really applies to business, but it also reminds me of, remember the time that we sang in church, you, me, and Grandma and Lindsay played for us, and we sang, This is the Christ.
Yeah.
And you know, man, we put our heart and soul into that song, and then it just felt so flat. Not pitch wise. I mean,
Right.
afterwards, the response from the congregation
Yeah.
was dead. And that's what I think this means about, we presented our product to this congregation and we got no response.
Yeah.
It was weird. And I still don't really know why. That did they just not know the etiquette on, you know, but it just didn't feel like anybody was smiling or.
Right. It almost felt like they just
Yeah,
tuned it out and weren't even listening.
it did. Yeah, it was really an odd
Physically or
situation.
spiritually listening.
But that's the kind of thing I think we risk when we, you know, we put something on social media and it gets crickets, you know. So of course, usually I find out that I only posted it to myself or to one person, and no wonder I got crickets.
Oops.
Or I didn't push the post button.
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes you put something out there, and you know, especially lately, there's so much controversial material we're putting
Yeah.
on
Sharing an unpopular
social
opinion
media.
is terrifying right now.
Yes, socially posting an unpopular opinion, but sometimes we have to stand up for what we believe in.
Right.
And
I know.
take a
I
stand.
made a post yesterday on my stories on Instagram and Facebook, and it was something that maybe I wasn't very eloquent in my words, or maybe it seemed harsh or blunt to other people, but I don't care, because there are certain things that I just don't stand for. And if it means I lose friends, then please go. I don't want to be your friend. I don't want you in my circle if you agree with this atrocious thing that's happening in the world that I want nothing to do with. And if that means I lose friends, then fine. Sometimes that's what happens when you have to stand up for yourself and take a side on any kind of issue. And it's not even political. I don't even get into that, because there's so many sides to different things that it's not worth it. And there's truth in all sides.
And there's so much right now that with to wear a mask or not, or who to vote for, all the different protests and ideology that's going around, and it's just we kind of having to take sides. And let's not go farther into that, because I don't want this to turn into a political discussion. But what does it feel like when you decide, I'm going to go ahead and take the risk and put myself out there? You feel kind of naked.
Yeah. I mean, before I hit the post button, I hesitated for a second and felt like, do I really want to lose friends if, and I even said, unfriend me or unfollow me if you don't agree, and I don't care.
Yeah.
Because, and that hesitation was, do I really want to lose friends if that's what they're going to do? And I mean, it was a matter of 5 seconds that I thought, nope, I don't care. If they, want to have their opinions on this subject that totally disagree with mine, then good riddance. And so I posted it. And even after that, for a split second, I was like, oh, what have I done? Then I realized, no, I'm serious.
The hangover that she mentions.
Yeah. And luckily for me, it was just a brief 1 second thing. And, oh, well, if they're gone, they're gone. And that's their problem, not mine, because it's not going to hurt me. If anything, it's more, I'm sad that you don't share that same opinion, but that's just how it is these days.
But I was going to ask, what do you do when you feel emotionally exposed? And I was thinking that, I wanted to move on, so I don't want to talk about it too much. But vulnerability is like being naked on stage and hoping for applause rather than laughter. And one thing that I've learned in a way to kind of protect myself and maybe minimize my vulnerability is before I post something that's that's controversial, or before I even say something, I need to either be absolutely certain that I'm right, or that I absolutely believe this, that it's true, and then I'm willing to take whatever darts people throw at me, and it's like, yeah, I can take it because I really believe this, or I know I'm right, or there's another or. I say, I could be wrong, but, and then I open myself up in a vulnerable way.
Right, you make yourself teachable. If someone points out,
correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I think. And that way I'm asking for people's feedback in a way that they can share it in a teaching way rather than a shred me to ribbons kind of way.
Right.
So, okay, let's move on. Our next, the next quote is, I managed situations and micromanaged the people around me. I performed until there was no energy left to feel. I made what was uncertain certain, no matter what the cost. Yeah, okay, I'm looking at the wrong spot. So, I had to think about this a little bit too. And I don't know, I think, as my daughter, I'm sure you could say I have micromanaged you, especially when we had a big event going on, company coming over, when we were setting up a wedding. And, I do like to have my ducks all lined up. But I've also learned that if you play to people's strengths, like, for example, my son's wedding, Devin's wedding, that we gave you a job to do that I knew that you could take care of that job and I would not have to micromanage you.
Right.
We're in charge of display because that's something you're really good at. And it worked out that Lindsay, who doesn't have any interest in design, but is, very organized in a business sort of way, she sort of found a niche for herself and used a clipboard. And every time somebody needed, okay, what do I need to do next? She had her clipboard and was giving people jobs to do and was like at the taskmaster. And she joked that she needed a headset. Oh my gosh, that would have been so helpful. And we found a job that she was really good at, and we had so other people doing what they were good at, so I didn't have to micromanage. But this is the making the uncertain certain. And I don't, okay, you might, if somebody thinks if I'm wrong here, I really would like you to point it out to me, because for me, making the uncertain certain is how I manage my vulnerability. But it's like for that wedding, for example, you just can't imagine the amount of research I had done because we lived far away from the venue, 3.5 hours. So I had looked it up online and calculated the dimensions of the room by looking up the standard of the basketball lines that were on the floor. Is okay, if this is this big, then this must be that big, to figure out how many tables we could put up. And I drew up an elaborate but detailed layout for where everything needed to be, exactly how it was supposed to look. And so everybody had my vision for this wedding, and I think it really went well. I had given myself just hours of stress about it to come to these things, but it worked well. And list making, that's how I make the uncertain certain. And I don't really always hold myself to my lists, but I make them, and it gets the worry out of my head, and I feel less.
Yeah, so that you can think.
Yes,
I'm the same way.
Yeah, and it makes me feel less vulnerable. So the last one that I have for chapter 2 is, nothing has transformed my life more than realizing that it's a waste of time to evaluate my worthiness by weighing the reaction of the people in the stands. The people who love me and will be there regardless of the outcome are within arm's reach, and this realization changed everything. And I love that, the people in the stands. I should have made that in italics or something. So who are the people in the stands? I think they're usually imaginary.
Yeah, probably.
I
Because
want to talk.
you're imagining what people are thinking or how they're going to react. And most of the time, that's not true. So you're imagining things, people essentially who aren't real.
Right now, the people in the stands right now are the people who may watch this video. Hopefully people
Yeah,
do. The people who come into our group later and go back to this.
right.
When you post on social media, it's anybody who might read it. So who are those people in the stands? And here's the kicker. Do we really care what they think? Or the people who are around us, they're the ones who matter. I think I learned years ago that I worried about what people thought of me, and then I realized they weren't thinking. They didn't care. They didn't look
Yeah.
at my feet or my toenails or they weren't noticing that my earrings didn't match my necklace or whatever. Nobody was paying that much attention to me, and
Right.
they didn't notice the blemishes on my face. It's really more what comes out of my mouth and the way I treat them that they notice. And so that really helped me. So I'm going to stop sharing now and let you take chapter 3, and you got about 15 to 16 minutes. No,
Okay.
not by that clock.
13
Sorry,
according to mine.
yeah, my clock on the wall is slow. I need to put a new battery in it.
That's okay. Okay, so chapter 4 is understanding and combating
4,
shame.
you're supposed to do 3.
I mean, chapter 3,
Oh,
sorry, I can't read. Gosh. Chapter 3, understanding and combating shame. At least I had the right title.
Thank you.
Okay, so I really love this entire chapter, and I'll probably go back and read parts of it again because
It was good.
underlining and taking notes because it's just underlining the entire chapter, and that's not really effective either. So I underlined a few things and made notes of things I really enjoyed. Anyway, I obviously really loved the Harry Potter references because
I knew you would.
the
Yeah,
Harry
we're
Potter
Harry Potter fans.
Anyway, so I will share one quote that she shared with the story of the guy that came up to talk to her and tell her that she was like Snape. Anyway, and she says, this is a quote from Sirius Black from Harry Potter. And Sirius is telling Harry to listen very carefully, and he says, "You're not a bad person. You're a very good person who bad things have happened to. Besides, the world isn't split into good people and Death Eaters. We've all got both light and dark inside us. What matters is the part we choose to act on. That's who we really are." And those last 2 sentences, I think, is the most important part of that whole thing, that what matters is the part we act on. So if someone says something to us that makes us react or whatever, that's what's important. That's on us, how we respond to things. Or when someone says, gives us kind of a call to action, do we do it or not? And if it's that action of acting or not acting, that's what's important. That decides who we are and kind of shows the world what our beliefs and our stances, I guess, on different subjects. And then I really liked the what did she call it? I have a little note. Gremlin Ninja Warrior training.
Yeah.
Her little, this little 3 or 4 step process of how do you get through these shame and understanding it. So the questions I liked, I pulled from the back. Have you ever attached your self-worth to how something of yours was received? And my answer was yes, because of course I have. Who hasn't?
Yes.
That somehow we attach, even if it's, the outfit you picked for the day. If someone says that's not very cute, it immediately makes us feel like, oh, I'm not qualified to dress myself because I can't make a cute outfit. And even, that's a trivial thing, but even bigger,
those Mean Girls and the the comments they made about our weird shoes or whatever.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the section where she talked about the difference of men and women and how they deal with shame.
Yes.
And I 100% agree with both sides, that how women respond and how men respond, in my experience, it's all true. That's exactly it. We feel attacked by our looks and our parenting or motherhood, and men feel weak if, they're not capable of doing something, that it's more of a physical, you're not tough enough for this. And I have that. I'm in a house of boys, and all of them are that way. If they're not strong enough to do something, they immediately feel like, worthless. I can't do that. I'm not good enough. And even with little boys, it's the same.
Not to think that way.
Right. And so it's
I did
hard.
take issue with her list of what people see as manly. And I guess as you're thinking about the world at large, I guess that would be true. But the world in our family, that's, violence is not something we see as manly.
Right.
A lot of those things.
But as far as the world goes, as an average man, then yes, those would apply.
I'm sure just some of those things still cross their minds. I'd kind of like to, have men in the conversation, but.
Well, hopefully they'll share in the comments then when we share the video.
Please
do. So the next question was, what are your gremlins? What do they say to you to prevent you from moving forward? And for me, I didn't have a specific instance in mind, but some of the common things that come up when I'm feeling that shame and vulnerability is that they think you're stupid. Something I said, if I get crickets on a post, they don't agree. They think whatever I said is dumb and they don't care. And maybe it's true. Most of the time it's not.
They're not being rude.
Yeah. I have had this a lot. You talk too much. I had a roommate in college my first semester who was annoyed that I got passionate about Sonic charging my card twice for one thing.
I remember that.
And I mean, it was only like $4, wasn't a big deal, but it was the first time that I'd essentially had someone steal money from me. That's not okay. I bought one sandwich and you made me pay for two. And when I, noticed it on the bank statement and I had contacted them about, you owe me $4, I even, highlighted on the bank statement, here's where you charged me twice and I only paid for one. I never ended up getting it back because I would have had to go into the restaurant, and by then I was out of state, and I wasn't going to do that for $4.
Probably could have called the bank and said that was a bogus charge.
True, but at the same time, it was only $4, and I'll just consider it a charitable donation. How about that? But during that, as a freshman in college, I was offended that someone stole my money, and my roommate at one point said, "You have to stop. Like, no one cares. You're too passionate over something that's so stupid." And looking back, I can see her perspective that, okay, yeah, at the end of the day, it is kind of dumb. But in that moment, for me, but that's mine. They didn't deserve that. They had no right to just take my money. And it could have been much worse and been a lot more money.
We need others to help us set more realistic boundaries, though.
Right. But I told her at the time, I said, I'm not going to apologize for being passionate about anything. You don't agree with it? That's fine. But keep your opinion to yourself. That's rude. You don't get to tell people what they can be passionate about and what they can't be, even if you don't agree. If you don't agree, fine. Look away, keep your mouth shut, mind your own business. And that's totally fine. But in that, she also added that you talk so much and it's really annoying. And she said it in a nice way, but I thought, okay, sometimes I agree. And I tell myself, stop talking. It's not your turn. And that's fine too. But it's just because we have different personalities. You can't.
So are you thinking of the gremlins as in like actual people who respond to you?
Sometimes it's more of just like an idea of a group of people who think this thing about me. Sometimes it is a particular person or a specific instance. I think it kind of changes depending on the circumstance.
Well, I was referring to your self-talk and oh, I can't do that, or I'm too stupid, I'm too whatever.
Yeah, well, and sometimes that gremlin is ourselves.
Gremlins, because it puts kind of a perspective on them that this is not coming from a place of a good place. It's coming from a bad place. Right. And so we shouldn't listen.
Right. And I even made a note in the margins at the beginning of the chapter about when she talked about shame coming from a negative place, and what is it, connectivity, I think, that comes from a positive place. And because I'm religious, I made in the notes that shame comes from Satan. Don't let him win. That it's something, he wants us to feel that shame so that we feel worthless, less than, not enough, too vulnerable, I guess you could say, in a negative way where we don't want to make a change. So instead we give in and accept that shame and we live with it, and that's not healthy.
Self-doubt, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the next one we kind of touched on was the difference in men and women and how they deal with shame. But I liked where she said on page 92, basically men live under the pressure of one unrelenting message: do not be perceived as weak. Based on your personal experiences, what do the list of masculine and feminine norms ring true for you? Why or why not? And I guess before that, she wrote about women. They went after my appearance and my mothering, 2 kill shots taken straight from the list of feminine norms, which I mentioned before. And I wrote that 100% yes, that I agree that in my experience, those things are true. The world thinks it's okay to judge my parenting, and the world thinks it's okay to judge our men, our husbands, fathers, sons, whatever age they are, that their inability to make money for their family makes them weak, or their lack of a job, so same kind of thing, or even because someone drives a pickup and they just drive a car, that they're less of a man somehow because they don't drive a manly truck. And it's silly. Even if part of it like makes some sense, it doesn't make it true.
I'll have to talk to my husband and see that. I mean, he's your dad, so you know what I mean. But find out how this really affects him. He's definitely not one to share his feelings.
Yeah.
But he doesn't seem to be as sensitive about appearing manly. I mean, definitely in a few ways, but I don't think it, you know, he didn't care if he wears a pink shirt or, you know, whatever. And
I know my husband's the same way, and he'll say he's not afraid to wear pink, but if I bought him a pink shirt, he wouldn't wear it. He'll wear a pink tie if I'm wearing something that matches. But if I said, hey, I bought you a pink shirt because you like pink, he wouldn't wear it.
But, you know, I wish that they could know what we really think and vice versa. But, you know, I think most women are really more concerned about them being responsible and brave and honest and being a protector to some degree. You know, we don't want them to make like we can't take care of ourselves at all. But I do want them to be the one that, you know, maybe if there's something scary happens, that they're ready to jump in and not wait for me to charge ahead, you know.
Right.
But I think those are some of the things that being a really good dad, you know, being willing to share some emotion, that's a real man to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they know that.
I know the one section when she talked about the question, as a woman, how have you reacted to the men in your life when they were vulnerable? And she talked about that for a little bit in the chapter about how women respond and that we make them feel less manly. I don't feel like I do that. I feel like I appreciate when a man can be vulnerable, and I kind of latch on to that, like, oh yay, I'm not the only one who feels that way. So I try to be welcoming and supportive and caring instead of putting down.
But would you say to your sons if they were crying, man up? You know, you might not, but a man might. Some men might.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have said that, but it's sometimes over after we've already talked about, you know, it's okay to be upset, it's okay to cry, it's okay here, and they're just still going on with it. Anyway, well, we've only got a minute left, but we should, if anyone has more thoughts or comments about either of the chapters and questions in the book,
I think we
discuss
should
them in the comments.
type them into the comments so that people can respond.
That's a good idea. Anyway, and then, I mean, this chapter was long, so there was a lot, but I think if we can continue the discussion in the comments, that'd be really helpful.
Yep. Okay, well, I think we have to end here. I don't know if it'll kick us off or what, but thank you for joining us. Please make some comments in the comments, and we will see you next week with chapters 4 and 5.
Yes. Okay. Bye.
Have a good day.